I never thought I would be the kind of man to be blindsided by his own wife. I always believed that if you worked hard, stayed loyal, and built a good life together, your partner would do the same. I thought love was enough. I was wrong. For years, I poured everything into my business. I built it from the ground up, sacrificing nights, weekends, and even my health at times, to make sure it became something I could be proud of. It wasn't just a company. It was a part of me, a testament to everything I had worked for. And all this time, I believed that my wife, Miriam, supported me, that she saw my efforts and appreciated what I was doing for both of us. But now, I can see that she never truly cared about the work I put in. She cared about what it provided. It started as small things, little comments that didn't seem significant at the time. She would say things like, "We're so lucky to have this," or, "It's amazing how our business has made life easier for us." I always corrected her. It wasn't our business. It was mine. I had built it before we even met, and I was the one running it. She never lifted a finger to help, but I let those comments slide. I told myself she was just proud of what we had. Then, a few months ago, her brother, Darren, got engaged. That's when everything started to shift. Darren had always been a problem. He was the kind of guy who jumped from one thing to the next, never staying in one job, never following through on anything. He had dreams, big ones, but no discipline to turn them into reality. Miriam had always babied him, making excuses for his failures, insisting he just needed the right opportunity. And then, one evening, she brought it up. "I have an idea," she said as we sat at the dinner table. She had that sweet, almost innocent tone she used whenever she wanted something. "You've been working so hard. Maybe it's time to take a step back, enjoy life more. What if we gave Darren the business as a wedding gift?" At first, I thought I had misheard her. I actually laughed, but she wasn't laughing. "Are you serious?" I asked, feeling my stomach tighten. "Completely," she said, reaching across the table to take my hand. Like this was some romantic gesture. It would mean so much to him. He wants to start his own thing, and this would be a way to set him up for success. "And you deserve a break. We have more than enough money." I pulled my hand away. "We have more than enough money?" I repeated, my voice sharp. "Miriam, that money isn't some random gift from the universe. It came from my work, my sacrifices. You want me to just hand over everything I built to a guy who's never held a job for more than 6 months? She sighed, as if I was being unreasonable. "It's for family," she said. "Isn't that what family does?" I felt something crack inside me. She wasn't asking for a favor. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling something inside me shift. For years, I had assumed that Miriam and I were on the same page, that we both understood what it meant to build something together. But now, for the first time, I saw the truth. I wasn't her husband. I was a resource, a means to an end. She wanted me to just give away everything I had worked for, as if my years of struggle, my countless sacrifices, meant nothing. And she expected me to smile while doing it. The next morning, I acted normal. I kissed her on the forehead, told her I had an early meeting, and left before she could bring up Darren again. But my mind was racing. I needed to know just how deep this went. And so, I did something I never thought I'd have to do. I started paying attention. For years, I had trusted Miriam blindly. I never questioned where she went, what she did, or who she spent time with. I had been too busy working, too busy building our life, to notice the details. But now, with my eyes open, the cracks in our marriage weren't just visible. They were gaping holes. I started small. I checked her phone while she was in the shower, expecting to find nothing. After all, she had never given me a reason to be suspicious. But what I saw made my stomach drop. There were hundreds of messages between her and Darren. Conversations about money, about my business, about how it's only fair that he gets a share of the success. But it wasn't just about Darren. There were messages to someone else, someone saved under a simple A. I scrolled through their texts, my hands shaking. "Miriam, he's still thinking about it, but he'll cave. He always does. Good. Just keep pushing. If we do this right, you'll be free sooner than you think. Miriam, I know. I just need him to believe it's his idea. That's my girl." I nearly dropped the phone. What the hell did that mean? Free? Free from me? I heard the shower turn off, so I quickly put the phone back and walked out of the bedroom, my pulse hammering. I needed air. I needed to think. Because now, I wasn't just dealing with greed. I was dealing with something much worse. That afternoon, I started digging. If Miriam was planning something, I had to be 10 steps ahead. So I hired a private investigator. It felt ridiculous. This was my wife. But something in my gut told me that if I didn't, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. And I was right. 3 days later, I got a call from the investigator. His voice was sharp, urgent. We need to meet. Now. 30 minutes later, I was sitting across from him in a coffee shop, my heart pounding as he placed a folder in front of me. Your wife, he said, has been meeting with someone regularly, not just once or twice. I traced her for the last 3 days, and she's been with him every time you were at work. I opened the folder. Inside were photos. There she was, Miriam, laughing, holding hands, kissing another man, a man I recognized instantly. Darren. I stared at the photos, my mind blank, my entire body numb. It didn't make sense. It couldn't make sense. I had suspected her of using me, of pushing me to give up my business. But this? You're sure about this? I asked, my voice flat. The investigator nodded. They're not just close, Elliot. They've been meeting in hotels. They've been together for months, maybe longer. Months, maybe longer. I felt like the walls were closing in around me. My wife, with her own brother? No, I wouldn't believe it. Except, deep down, I already did. Because now, everything made sense. The way she defended him, the way she needed him to have the business, the way she talked about family like it was some unbreakable force. Because to her, it was. I shut the folder, my hands shaking. I couldn't fall apart. Not now. I needed a plan. Because if she thought I was going to just hand over my business and disappear quietly, she had no idea who she was dealing with. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling like the ground beneath me was cracking open. My mind was a storm. Rage, betrayal, disgust. I wanted to confront her right then and there, demand answers, scream, throw something. But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I finally understood what was happening. Miriam wasn't just trying to manipulate me into giving my business to Darren out of some twisted sense of family loyalty. She was engineering my exit. She wanted me gone, out of the picture, discarded like an old appliance she didn't need anymore. And Darren? He wasn't just the lazy screw-up brother I had tolerated for years. He was her partner in this. Maybe more. I drove for hours, trying to calm the fire inside me. I replayed every moment, every interaction, looking for the signs I had missed. They were everywhere. The way she always defended him. The way she pushed for family to be taken care of. The way she smiled when I said I'd think about it, completely unaware that I was already seeing her in a different light. I needed more. More proof. More leverage. More time. If I went to her now, she'd lie, twist the narrative, make herself the victim. No. I needed to let this play out. I needed to let her believe she had one. So I did. For the next week, I played my part. I acted distant but distracted, like a man who was thinking. I let her believe I was warming up to the idea of giving Darren the business. I even let her convince me to start the process of signing over shares. She was giddy. She tried to hide it, but I could see it in her eyes. She thought she had me. And Darren? He was suddenly respectful toward me. Almost nervous. Like he wasn't sure if I knew, but he didn't want to push his luck. I let him think I was oblivious. But behind the scenes, I was working. I had my lawyer draft fake transfer papers, just convincing enough to make her think the deal was real, but legally meaningless. I had my financial advisor start quietly moving assets, setting up protection so that, even if she tried something, she'd get nothing. And most importantly, I dug deeper, because I needed to know everything before I made my next move. 3 days before the wedding, I got my answer. I met with my investigator again, this time in a private office. He handed me another folder. This time, I didn't hesitate. I flipped it open and felt my stomach turn. It wasn't just Darren. Miriam had another man, someone completely different, and they had been seeing each other for over a year. She's planning something big, the investigator said. There are financial movements happening in the background. She's been preparing to leave for a while. And based on what I've found, I think she's waiting until after the wedding to disappear. With your money. I clenched my jaw. I should have been furious. But all I felt was cold, calculated focus. Because now, I had everything I needed. The night before the wedding, Miriam came to me in bed, curling up next to me like she hadn't already decided to ruin my life. You've been quiet lately, she said softly, tracing a finger over my arm. Are you still sure about the transfer? I turned to her, forcing a smile. Of course. She beamed, kissed me, whispered about how much she loved me. And in that moment, I felt nothing. Because tomorrow, I was going to burn everything she had planned to the ground. The morning of the wedding felt surreal. The sky was clear, the air crisp, and everything was moving around me like I was watching a play. One where I already knew the tragic ending. Miriam was glowing with excitement, dressed in a designer gown she had insisted on buying despite already owning enough expensive dresses to last a lifetime. Darren strutted around like he owned the place, shaking hands, flashing his signature smug grin. I stayed calm, composed. I played my role to perfection. But inside, I was counting down the minutes. The ceremony itself was a grand affair. Luxurious, extravagant, over the top, just like everything Miriam did. She had spared no expense, making sure every guest was impressed, making sure everything looked perfect, and all the while, she had no idea that this day wasn't going to end the way she had planned. I spotted my lawyer in the back of the room, casually sipping champagne. He gave me the smallest nod. Everything was ready. The papers she thought were legitimate? They meant nothing. My assets were secure. The business wasn't going anywhere. And most importantly, the real documents, the ones that detailed her infidelity, financial manipulation, and secret plans to disappear with another man, were in my pocket. I had thought long and hard about how to do this. Should I expose her in front of everyone? Should I let her humiliate herself? Should I wait until she was at her highest, just to rip it all away? In the end, I decided on something much simpler, something colder. We made it through the ceremony, the vows, the fake smiles, the applause. Then came the speeches. Miriam stood first, thanking everyone, gushing about how wonderful it was to celebrate family, going on and on about loyalty, love, and trust. The very thing she had thrown away without a second thought. I almost laughed. Then, it was my turn. I stood, glass in hand, looking around the room. Every eye was on me. Miriam's smile was bright, expectant. She had won, in her mind. She had everything she wanted. I took a deep breath. Then, calmly, clearly, I began. I want to thank you all for being here today. This is a special day, not just for Darren and his new wife, but for Miriam and me as well. It marks a turning point in our lives. Murmurs of agreement. Miriam reached for my hand, squeezing it. I didn't squeeze back. You see, I continued, for a long time, I believed in certain things. That love was built on trust. That family meant honesty. That loyalty was something to be treasured. Miriam's grip on my hand tightened slightly. So, in that spirit, I said, reaching into my pocket, I want to honor those values today. And the best way to do that is with a gift. I pulled out an envelope. Miriam's smile faltered for just a second. This, I said, holding it up, is for you, Miriam. She hesitated, then took it, laughing nervously. What is this? Open it. The entire room was watching now. I could see Darren shifting in his seat. The tension crackled through the air. Miriam tore the envelope open, pulling out the neatly stacked papers. At first, she frowned, flipping through them, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Then her face drained of color. This isn't. She looked up at me, her voice barely a whisper. What is this? I leaned in slightly, my voice just as soft. This is everything, Miriam. Every lie, every secret, every betrayal, every plan you had to take my business, my money, and run off with your lover. It's all right there. And now, everyone here knows it too. The room had gone silent. Miriam's hands started shaking. Darren stood abruptly, eyes darting between me and her. "This is a joke, right?" He stammered. I turned to him, shaking my head. "No joke, Darren. You might want to read the last page. There's a full breakdown of the transactions. The ones where Miriam was already siphoning money into an account under her lover's name." The silence turned deadly. I could see the realization dawn on Miriam's face. Her perfect plan? The future she had been counting on? Gone. The people around us started whispering, murmurs of shock spreading through the room like wildfire. And me? I just set my glass down and walked away. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to make a scene. The damage was already done. Miriam had destroyed everything, but not in the way she had expected. And I was finally free. I walked out of that ballroom with my head high, my pulse steady, my hands no longer shaking. I had imagined this moment in 1,000 different ways, some explosive, some dramatic, some filled with rage. But in the end, the simplest approach had been the most effective. Miriam was ruined, and the best part? I didn't even have to raise my voice. The second I left the reception hall, my phone started buzzing. Calls. Messages. A few from mutual friends who had witnessed the spectacle, others from people I hadn't spoken to in years. But none of them mattered. The only call I cared about was the one from my lawyer. I answered on the first ring. "It's done," I said, stepping into the cold night air. A small chuckle came from the other end. I figured. The legal notifications were just sent. By the time she checks her accounts, she'll see that every dime she thought she was getting is untouchable. And the divorce papers? Filed. I let out a slow breath. "Good," I said. "I want this over as fast as possible. And it will be. She'll try to fight, of course. But with everything we have on her," he paused. "Well, let's just say this is going to be very one-sided." One-sided. Exactly the way it should be. I checked into a hotel that night, knowing I couldn't go home. Not yet. Miriam would be livid, and I wasn't in the mood for a meltdown. I needed space. Time to process everything. But as I sat on the hotel bed, staring at the city lights outside the window, something strange happened. I felt nothing. No joy. No satisfaction. No relief. I had exposed her, dismantled her plans, freed myself from the life she had been trying to trap me in, and yet I didn't feel victorious. Maybe it was because deep down, I still couldn't believe how easily she had discarded me, how little I had meant to her. How long had she been planning this? Had she ever loved me? Or was I just a stepping stone to the life she thought she deserved? I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. It didn't matter. What was done was done. And then, my phone buzzed again. I expected it to be more messages, more missed calls, but it wasn't. It was a single notification from my bank. One failed login attempt from an unrecognized device. I sat up instantly, my heart pounding. She was already trying to access my accounts. By the time I woke up the next morning, the internet had exploded with what had happened at the wedding. I hadn't said a word to anyone, but apparently I didn't need to. Someone had recorded the whole thing and uploaded it. It was everywhere. Groom exposes wife's secret plans in front of entire wedding. Business owner outs wife's shocking scheme at family event. Watch this husband's chilling wedding toast that left the bride in tears. There were clips, memes, reactions. Strangers were dissecting every second, every word. Some people were calling me a legend. Others thought I should have done even worse. A few tried to defend Miriam, saying maybe there was a misunderstanding. But the documents spoke for themselves. And Miriam? She had gone completely silent. For a moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. Then I remembered the texts. He always caves. He always does. Not anymore. By noon, my lawyer called again. "You're not going to believe this," he said, sounding almost amused. "What?" "Miriam just tried to file an emergency claim to seize half of your business as part of a marital asset distribution." I laughed, actually laughed. "You're kidding." "Nope. She's desperate." He paused. Too bad she forgot about that ironclad prenuptial agreement she signed herself. Ah, yes. The prenup. Miriam had agreed to it back when she thought it was just a formality, when she was still playing the role of the devoted wife. It had been airtight, making sure that if she ever tried something like this, she would walk away with nothing. She had no case, no leverage, no way out. "She'll push," I said. She'll try everything. Oh, I know. But she's already lost, Elliot. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. She really thought she could take everything from me. And now, she had nothing. By the end of the day, I got one last message from her. It was short, desperate, and, honestly, kind of pathetic. Miriam, please, let's talk. I made a mistake. We can fix this. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. Me? No. We can't. And I blocked her number. She had made her choices. And now, she had to live with them. The moment I blocked Miriam's number, I felt something shift inside me. The last lingering attachment, the final thread holding me to a woman who had treated me like nothing more than a stepping stone, gone. But I knew this wasn't the end. Miriam wasn't the type to accept defeat. She had spent years perfecting the art of manipulation, twisting situations in her favor, always landing on her feet no matter what. She wouldn't go down quietly. And I was right. Less than 24 hours later, my lawyer called again. This time, he wasn't amused. She's going public, he said, his voice edged with irritation. Interviews, social media, the works. She's already spinning a new narrative. I sighed. Let me guess. The poor, betrayed wife? The victim of a cruel, calculating husband? Pretty much. According to her, you blindsided her. She's claiming you fabricated everything, that the financial documents were faked, and that she never tried to steal from you. She's painting herself as a woman who just wanted to support her family, and you punished her for it. I laughed, shaking my head. Of course she is. She's also claiming you were controlling, and that she never had access to any money, that you made her feel isolated and powerless. That part stung, not because it was true, but because it was so far from reality. Miriam had spent our entire marriage living in luxury. She never had to work, never had to worry about money, never had to sacrifice the way I did. And now she wanted to rewrite history? But I wasn't worried, because I had the truth. Over the next few days, Miriam's version of events spread like wildfire. She went on podcasts, did an exclusive sit-down interview with a tabloid site, even posted a tearful video where she dramatically claimed to be homeless and penniless because of me. She knew how to play the sympathy card. And for a while, some people bought it. But here's the thing about lying. It only works when there's no proof to contradict it. And I had plenty of proof. Bank statements, emails, text messages, the prenup she had signed without hesitation. And then, the final nail in the coffin, the surveillance footage from the hotels she had been sneaking into. I hadn't planned on using it. At first, I thought it was enough to know the truth myself. But once she decided to drag my name through the mud, I had no choice. So, with the help of my legal team, I released everything. Not in a dramatic press conference, not in a vengeful rant. I just posted the facts, screenshots, receipts, contracts, the works. And in less than an hour, Miriam's carefully crafted victim story collapsed. People turned on her instantly. Comments flooded in. Wait, she really thought she could play the victim when there's this much evidence against her? The audacity is insane. She was literally stealing from him and still thought she could make herself look innocent. She faked being homeless? This woman is unreal. Her interviews were taken down. Her accounts were locked from too many people calling her out. Her so-called supporters vanished. And Miriam? She went completely silent. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Darren. I almost didn't answer. I had nothing to say to him, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up, waiting for him to speak first. There was a long pause. Then, in a quiet, defeated voice, he said, I had no idea. I scoffed. Sure you didn't. No, I mean it, he insisted. I knew she wanted you to hand over the business, but I didn't know about the rest. I didn't know about the other guy. I didn't know she was already planning to run. I wanted to believe he was lying, but something in his voice sounded different. Hollow. Shaken. She used me too, he admitted. She made me think we were in this together. She said you didn't deserve the business because you were always too busy for her, that it wasn't fair that you got to have everything. She told me you were cold, that you didn't care about family. I believed her. I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temples. And now? I saw the proof, he said. I know I was an idiot, and I know you'll never forgive me. But I had to call. I had to say something. I was quiet for a long time. Part of me wanted to tell him to go to hell. But another part just felt tired. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. So, I told him the only thing that mattered. This is the last time we speak, Darren. Don't call again. And I hung up. That night, as I sat in my quiet apartment, I realized something. I had won. Not in the way I originally imagined. There was no dramatic victory, no grand moment of revenge. Just clarity. Miriam had destroyed herself. I didn't have to do anything but tell the truth. And now? Now, I was finally free. Freedom felt strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't burdened by Miriam's expectations, her manipulations, or her endless demands. I didn't have to second-guess every conversation, wonder what her true motives were, or feel like I was constantly being played. And yet, despite everything, there was an odd emptiness that settled in my chest. Not because I missed her, I didn't. Not because I regretted exposing her, I never would. It was because, for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what came next. My entire life had been structured around working to provide for someone who saw me as nothing more than a bank account. And now that she was gone, what the hell was I supposed to do? The first few weeks after everything exploded were a blur. The news cycle moved on, the gossip faded, and people found something new to talk about. Miriam disappeared from public view, no doubt licking her wounds and trying to figure out her next move. I wasn't stupid. I knew she'd try something. A woman like her didn't just accept defeat. But I also knew that, legally, she had nothing left to stand on. She had no money, no access to my assets, no way back into my life. And as for Darren, I meant what I said. I wanted nothing to do with him. Whether or not he had been a pawn in Miriam's game didn't matter. He had played his part, and I wasn't about to waste energy on someone who had been more than willing to betray me for personal gain. I was done looking backward. It was time to move forward. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at my office, staring at a blank document on my computer. I had been so caught up in fighting Miriam that I hadn't stopped to think about what I wanted now. Did I even want to keep running the business? For so long, it had been my entire life, my identity. But now, the thought of diving back into it without hesitation felt exhausting. Like I had spent so long surviving that I had forgotten how to live. I needed something different. I started considering my options. Selling the business? Maybe. Taking an extended break? Definitely. Exploring ideas I had never given myself time for? Absolutely. For the first time, my future was mine to decide. And that was more valuable than any revenge could ever be. And then, just as I was starting to breathe again, Miriam made her final move. I should have expected it. Late one night, I got an email from an anonymous sender. No subject, no greeting, just a single attachment. A video file. At first, I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. I clicked. The video opened to a dimly lit hotel room, and sitting on the edge of the bed, looking utterly destroyed, was Miriam. Her hair was messy, her makeup smeared. She wasn't wearing her usual designer clothes. She looked different. And then she started talking. "Elliot," she whispered, voice hoarse. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I have nothing left." I stared at the screen, unmoving. "You took everything," she continued, laughing bitterly. "And I deserved it. I did. I was selfish, I was greedy, and she choked on the words. "I ruined everything." For the first time, I didn't see the manipulator. I saw someone who had backed herself into a corner so tightly that there was no way out. "I lost everything," she murmured. "Darren won't even look at me. My friends? Gone. My accounts? Frozen. My reputation? Destroyed." She ran a shaking hand through her hair. "I know I don't deserve your sympathy. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away." Silence. Then she wiped her eyes, looked directly at the camera, and said the last words I ever expected. "Goodbye, Elliot." And the video ended. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen. This wasn't another manipulation. It wasn't a ploy. This was Miriam at her lowest, realizing that for the first time in her life, she had truly lost. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant, satisfied. Instead, all I felt was a quiet sense of finality. She was done, and so was I. I took a deep breath, closed my laptop, and walked away. It was time to start over. I woke up the next morning feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Miriam's video had been her final act, an unspoken acknowledgement that she had lost, that she had no more cards left to play. And while I didn't feel joy in her suffering, I also didn't feel guilt. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them. But I was free. For so long, I had been trapped in a cycle of work, sacrifice, and blind loyalty to someone who had only seen me as a means to an end. I had spent years chasing success, believing that if I just built something strong enough, I could create the perfect life. I had been wrong, because a perfect life wasn't built on wealth or power. It was built on the right people. And now, I had a chance to find them. The first thing I did was step away from my business. Not permanently, but for the first time in my life, I let go of the need to control every aspect of it. I brought in a new CEO, someone I trusted, someone who shared my vision but didn't need me to micromanage. I took a step back, allowed myself space to think, to breathe, to decide what I actually wanted. And then, I did something even more terrifying. I traveled. Not the kind of luxury vacations Miriam had always demanded. Not the five-star resorts and high-end shopping sprees. I traveled for myself. I spent months seeing the world, meeting people who had no idea who I was, who didn't care about my money or my reputation. I hiked through forests, sat in quiet cafes in cities I'd never been to, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. I realized something important out there, away from everything I had built. I didn't need to prove myself anymore. Not to Miriam, not to Darren, not to anyone. I was enough. I had always been enough. One evening, while sitting by the water in a small coastal town, my phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer. Divorce finalized. You're officially free. I stared at those words for a long time, letting them sink in. And then, for the first time since this all began, I smiled. Because I wasn't just free from Miriam. I was free from the version of myself that had settled for less, that had tolerated betrayal, that had ignored the warning signs because he thought love was enough. I was free to start over, to build something new, to choose better. I was free to finally live my own life. And that was worth more than anything I had ever lost.